Welcome, Reanimated fans. I'm H.A. Conrad, coming to you from Brooklyn, along with my intrepid co-host, Stuart. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, good morning.
And we are coming to you over, eventually this will be released, probably post, but who knows. But this is Thanksgiving weekend, and we've been, fully feasted, and, I still have some apple pie left, but for the most part, we did a good job. We gave a lot of we made up little to-go things because we had a massive turkey, and I'm happy to say that it all got consumed, at least so they tell me. I will say we had a great turkey this year. How about you guys?
Oh yeah, it was a whole process.
Did you fry it? Or I thought you were talking about doing that. Is that what you
I was talking about frying it, but buying all the gear and having to do it in a place where I wouldn't burn down the rest of California were a concern. So ended up just spatchcocking it and then brining it for 3 days in buttermilk, and then it was pretty good. It was great. No, actually, it was really good.
Awesome. We did. I mean, look, we have sort of oscillated between different methods, and we now have landed on one that tends to be, honestly, it's pretty minimal. We just dry brine it with a bunch of kosher salt. Threw a couple of apples and spices in it, cover it with whatever we're going to cover it with, like rosemary, thyme, all that crap.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put it in a bag. And part of that is because our oven is a little questionable. It's not even in all places for the heat. So the first time we did a turkey in the oven, it was a disaster because we did it without the bag. But the bag tends to keep it all kind of at the same level. And
you must have to cook it for much longer inside the bag, I assume.
No, the bag actually cuts the cooking time by half. So
insane. What
yeah,
sort of magic bag is this?
It's the Reynolds oven bag, and you just have to be super careful that it's not touching any heating elements in the oven. So you have to make sure you have enough space in there. But our 18-pound turkey took about 2.5 hours. So. And then, and the only thing I would say, just the method that the two drawbacks is that when you do the brining in the way we did, you can't really do gravy out of it. So we get the gravy separately from our...
Wait, hang on. 18-pound turkey for the two of you?
Well, we were making to-go things for our friends that we would be hosting. So that's why and also because I will own up to the fact that we kind of didn't know what we were going to do, and we waited too long to get our turkey. And so all the small ones were gone because probably everybody was having smaller Thanksgiving feasts. So the only thing that the lowest poundage was 18 pound. We were planning to get probably a 15-pound turkey. So it wasn't that far off because we knew we were going to make stuff for our friends and our neighbors. Because we have a lot of the friends that we host would definitely not normally make their own feast. So, so this was a way that they could, even though we couldn't all be together, they could actually enjoy the day. So we did that. In between all of this, I was watching our Walking Dead, the World Beyond, and we're going to talk about the last couple episodes. But before we get to that, we have some news items. So,
the biggest one to me, or the most noticeable one, was this photo or picture, this illustration that Walking Dead put on their Twitter feed over the holiday weekend, showing a gathering at a Thanksgiving table, and there are layers to this picture. And I don't know, HA, if you've had a lot of time to look at it.
I looked at it. I noticed, of course, the helicopters, because that's a pretty significant thing, and they've got, there's a lot to unpack in this particular illustration.
There are a lot of things going on. So all the way on the left, you've got 4 tiny figures of Princess, Eugene, Pirate Lady, Kumiko, or Yumiko, I'm forgetting, and the King walking along in the distance. I think the man on the horseback is supposed to be Rick, probably.
Probably.
Because it's just like a silhouette. And then you've got at your table, Negan... Lord, Christian Serrano. What's the name of her character? It's Rosita. And then there's Virginia. So they're mixing their peanut butter and jelly here because Virginia is from Fear the Walking Dead. And you got Father Gabriel, you got Kelly, Daryl, Lydia, Jerry. I guess that's Herschel next to Maggie. You can barely see his face under a hat. He's got a hat like Glenn used to wear. And Maggie, and below Maggie is Aaron. The masked man is next to Maggie. Magna, Morgan. That's Alicia. And at the end of and then Coleman Domingo Strand is across from Alicia. And at the end of the table is Felix from World Beyond, which is crazy.
Yeah, this is all kind of nuts.
And then all the way in the distance by the house is Connie looking kind of lost. You got Judith, and I guess that's RJ, dog, and another unknown dog under the table. And Carol is reading a newspaper article about the new spin-off shows coming.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack in this.
It's kind of crazy that of all the characters of the cast of The World Beyond, they went with Felix. I think that might speak quite. That's interesting.
And then there's also that little mask right down there by Carol's feet.
Whatever that's supposed to mean.
I don't know.
That one I was just like, oh, now they're just messing with us. Or maybe that's from the original painting. Who knows? Because clearly this is just a doctored painting that.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before, but it looks for real.
And then the whole little writing that says the end is the beginning.
Well, which is straight out of the last episode that we're going to be talking about today from World Beyond.
So anyway, I thought this was interesting and telling, and I also think that they're messing with us to some degree. So there's that too. I sent you this. I sent you a couple things. Not to get into the COVID talk, but AstraZeneca's vaccine has now released a little bit more. Unfortunately, I think not the best news because there's a couple of things going on with it, which is that one part of how they did the vaccine, there was some issue with the manufacturing, so people got a half dose and then a full dose, and they found that little cohort of people actually had a higher level of resistance to the virus than people who got 2 full doses. So I think they need to tease out a lot more on this, and they probably need to do a longer trial, which is unfortunate because this is the cheaper of all the vaccines and also the most stable. So we'll see what happens, but at the moment I'm not super jazzed about what they're releasing and how it seems like it's a bit of a mess, and a little bit of a mess apparently how they sort of went about these trials, which is a bummer because this was like one of the things that I was excited about given where they had their research sort of had a head start on other things. But we'll see. Maybe they'll redeem themselves, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time, and I think that the other 2 vaccines will probably be far ahead at that point.
I mean, and given that there's new vaccine news that drops every time we podcast, I think we'll hear something today or tomorrow.
Probably. And then not totally, sort of a little bit related, but not really totally. But so I don't know, had you followed this in the news? I had followed it in the news because it is significant in terms of COVID, but basically they found COVID virus in minks, which were being raised in Denmark, and not just in Denmark, other places too. But what they found was that the virus had mutated, and the way it had mutated, they were scared because it was sort of the piece that the mRNA vaccines, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, or they were scared that this is it. But basically it was the thing that they were targeting with these vaccines, and this particular mutation, I guess, doesn't have whatever that spike is that they were targeting. So the government of Denmark freaked out and ordered that like hundreds of thousands of minks be destroyed.
I think millions, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was a big number.
I mean, a huge number. I mean, I'm a person that I am definitely not into fur. So I just, and I think there's been long debates, and they're not treated very humanely anyway. So I mean, there's that too. But that said, this is the livelihood of all these people. So that there was a lot of question about the legality of ordering these destroyed. Well, apparently they didn't do the destroying too well, because I guess there's these headlines that zombie mink are rising from the grave. But apparently what it actually is that they didn't dig the, this is also like a terrifying scenario, but they didn't dig whatever like mass graves for these minks, or mink. They didn't, it was very shallow. So as corpses are wont to do, they were filling with gases and whatever, and it seemed as if they were coming out of the ground, but it was just, gas, I guess. So then they
Just
decided,
bubbling up out of the ground.
yeah, but it's also like the idea that they're shallow enough that their little mink bodies are coming up through the ground, and that this could, I mean, you got to be worried about virus spreading or people somehow coming across it. So then they decided to dig deeper and bury deeper, I guess. But the whole thing sounds like a complete disaster to me. And then the idea of a mutated virus somehow being out there is also a little bit terrifying. This has actually been a pretty stable virus in the way that it's gone about. It's still kind of the same. They can tell where different parts of it came through minute changes, but overall the structure of it has stayed the same and relatively stable, which is actually good news on the vaccine front, because unlike the flu, which tends to have like a bit of drift, which is why the matchups aren't always the best every year, this apparently is pretty stable, which means that the current vaccines they've got will hopefully work very effectively. So that I don't know. What did you think of? Like, this is all just kind of creepy to me, because then of course I'm like, well, if they're like this in mink, what other animals are they mutating in? I don't know.
Yeah, we already know that you can get it from dogs. God, no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to think about it. I'm hoping that the vaccine industry is taking all this into account and we're going to have something useful in the next 6 months. Otherwise,
Yeah.
this is going to be a long, long issue.
Yeah.
However, when you're invited to go and meet your cousin's fiance, and the conversation comes around to the zombie apocalypse, as it often will, and you say, you know what, in the zombie apocalypse, I'm just going to board up my house and stay inside with my cat. And then your cousin's fiance says to you, but what if somebody else could take better care of your cat? And you say, no, my cat's going to stay with me in my house in the zombie apocalypse. And then you are uninvited to your cousin's wedding as a result of this
Well,
conversation.
okay.
You might end up on Reddit
You
writing
might.
about this.
Well, my question for you is, do you think that, first of all, I think that maybe people are having more of these conversations for obvious reasons because of where we are right now. So maybe the
Definitely.
question isn't necessarily about a zombie apocalypse, but hey, if you got sick with COVID, what's going to happen to your animal? And I get that kind of thing. This seemed to kind of go off the rails in an insane way. The guy in question, the poor dude, like, he was just basically saying that his cat was like a special needs cat and wouldn't survive the zombie apocalypse. And I think he was very specifically talking about a zombie apocalypse, but I
Yes.
suspect that the other people were not. Maybe they were veiled, or maybe this was like a subconscious discussion about COVID. And in any case, he really was puzzled, but also said, well, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. And then he goes into like all sorts of details about the special needs of his poor cat, who has like half its teeth, and you know just as
Separation anxiety. It
yeah,
sounds like a real mess.
like the whole thing. But I do feel kind of bad for him. I hope he makes up with his cousins. And then somebody,
It's absurd thing to get uninvited from
yeah.
a family wedding for. But
Well, and somebody also said, well, maybe she secretly covets your cat, the
yeah.
fiance, and that's possible too, I
Oh,
suppose.
you're obviously the best choice to take care of poor Mimsy. Should anything happen to me, come on, lame. Anyway, I thought it was silly. Hypothetical zombie apocalypse conversations should all be held behind a wall of this is hypothetical. Thank you,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then move
yeah.
on. And then HA, what is your Shaun of the Dead character according to the
Mine's
Zodiac?
like the dumb cousin Tom, who's like the Ed stand-in. I never went out on these things. They
I got
never
the news
pick.
anchor.
Yeah, like they never pick. Like, you and I always are at the lower end of things on these things, and I think that's just crap. But anyway,
Actually, no, the last one I was Lupita Nyong'o, so
oh well,
I
that's all
100%
right.
won, and because she was a badass in Little Monsters, and
That
but
you
this time
did,
I'm the guy who reads the news in Shaun of the Dead.
yeah.
Who,
Yeah,
yeah, no, didn't really work for me this time around, but you can't win every time.
yeah. The next thing up is how to train to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Yep.
And it basically, this is another, silly listicle, but it's about if you want to like basically build the odds in your favor for surviving the zombie apocalypse. It's giving like some tips, and some of these are actually cardio, the kind of thing that we have seen in Zombieland, the basics of sprinting and then doing parkour or that kind of thing. So it's just kind of silly, and goes through why, and it brings up running like at least twice. But then it throws in things like swimming and climbing and all that kind of thing. So, what are your thoughts about surviving? What do you think your odds would be?
Oh, fairly low considering how sedentary I've become during COVID for sure. But they want you to be like a CrossFitter. I think being wiry and agile is probably way better and more important than being jacked, like many of the images they're using. But this is from a website called Fitness Volt, and I think that they're more into like power lifters
Well,
than other types of fitness.
the other thing I would point out, just in terms of some of these super jacked people, is that they're not necessarily fast moving, right? Because they have way too much
Yeah.
bulkiness going
And
on.
they do say that in the first paragraph. They're like, look, if it's slow zombies, a power lifter might be okay. However, if this is 28 days later style, you better be able to sprint. And then they're like, and power lifters can be good sprinters because it's a power exercise that you need to develop the
Mm.
explosiveness to sprint away from zombies. And I'm more of thinking like, I think you probably want to be an ultra marathon runner.
Yep. I think that would an ultra marathoner might work out, or like if you're as you said, like doing like cross training and stuff like that because you're trying out these different skill sets. I definitely would be on the lower end of survival because, my knees and ankles can't deal with the running on pavement or hard surfaces, so that's difficult. So maybe if I was running in a field, I can go.
You could pick where you were going to run away from zombies,
I
sure.
mean, look, if you're talking about like endurance, I could go for a really long time, but I'm not ultra fast. So there's that issue.
Or in a rowboat. I mean,
If I was in a boat, no problem. But you know, I think my best option would be to probably hide.
but
Um,
the funniest section of this article is the swimming one for me. I'm like, no way. I mean, you might end up in water, and that's a bad thing because water is
right.
typically not a great place for you to be during a zombie
In
apocalypse.
general, I think
Know how
it's
to swim, yes, but don't like focus your zombie
energies. Yeah.
apocalypse exercising on the swim as like something you need to really excel at.
I feel like the climbing part is definitely a helpful thing though. I think
Yeah,
I don't really have a ton of climbing skill.
yeah.
Other than, the things I developed when I was a kid, but I would assume those skills were kind of rusty. Like, when you would just be like, all right, I'm going to climb that tree. And you don't have a fear of falling like you do when you're an adult. But, you know, I think that those kinds of skills are probably the sprinting and the climbing are probably the most helpful. So,
Yeah.
but speaking
Anyway,
of sprinting and slow, fast zombies and skill sets, are you ready to dive into our recap and slash review of the last couple episodes of Walking Dead World Beyond?
yeah, let's do this. These two were released as a twofer, but they don't really have, other than just continuing the story, they don't feel super joined. They could
No.
have been dribbled out, but I'm sure they did this just for sequencing. And it's The Deepest Cut, directed by Sidney Freeland and written by Maya Goldsmith and Ben Sokolowski. And then In This Life, directed by Magnus Martins, and written by Matthew Negrete, the showrunner, Maya Goldsmith, and Ben Sokolowski. So there was some continuity in terms of writers, and it does
Hmm.
basically pick up from one to the next. But that's the two. I didn't watch them in a row. I watched them one then the other. So, but stepping back and looking at this, yeah, I got to say this show earns its 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. It does not finish strong.
No, there's a lot I gotta unpack here with you. There's a couple of things that I do like about it. I think there's a few things with Elton that I do like. That
Elton
happens.
is yeah, Elton
To
is
me, he's
probably the bright light of the show, and
yeah,
Felix.
yeah, and he's like, to me, this is like the stuff with him is the strongest out of this. And unfortunately, I think some of the storyline with the sisters and specifically as it
Mhm.
relates to the bigger overall plot, I think is super weak.
I'm sorry. I have to give you a disclaimer that I'm not going to be able to stop myself from laughing about the sisters.
Oh my god! It was like it wasn't just laughing; it was sort of like groaning. I don't know, like
Oh,
some.
I could not. I was just laughing my ass off
All
by the
right.
end of
Well,
the second episode.
one of my biggest issues with this show is some of the dialogue that they choose to have between the sisters and their big reveals. There are things that are clearly not what they have built this character to be. It's not even like you've seen this with the characters. Like they just suddenly drop this in as this big, like giant reveal that's BS and
That's part
just
of what makes it so
complete.
funny.
It
Yeah.
is what makes it funny. And then they have like things, they've done this a few times in this. They have done it once or twice in the original Walking Dead, and even Fear the Walking Dead. But they do it so much more here, which really pisses me off. And it's like they'll have characters talking to each other, and they'll be like in a daunting situation, and be like, "How are we gonna get through?" Because we can, because we have to. We see this a lot with
Mhm.
oh God, why am I forgetting her name? The videotape in Fear the Walking Dead.
Al.
Al does this a lot. We
Yeah, that speech I immediately wrote down. I'm like, I've heard this speech before,
yes,
and I
it's
think it was in
Al.
Fear the Walking Dead. Yeah.
Yeah, and
We've
it's
done the impossible. We can do anything. I'm like,
right. Nah.
but
Uh,
also get a new speech, guys. We've heard this speech before, and it was like last season in Fear the Walking Dead.
right, and also don't be like I don't know, like so that stuff. Let go before going into it. That agree. There's some laughable moments in this, and not for a good reason. But let's talk about Elton, and let's talk about the deepest cut. Um, so we
Oh,
have
but before the very beginning of this, the what's the name of this episode? I forget already. But the deepest cut. That's you just said it.
yep,
It starts with Huck driving the truck, and she has a flashback to meeting with her mom. It is her mom, I guess,
yep,
right? Because they talk about the watch and blah blah blah. And what is it with the evil sandwiches? Only the bad guys get to eat sandwiches in this show, in this
yeah.
universe.
And
Like Dwight,
it's almost like a sandwich appears, and therefore, if a sandwich appears, something nefarious is happening.
somebody paid for that sandwich in blood. And typically that is the case. Like Dwight's sandwich, famously, with that whole montage of sandwich making at the Savior's camp. It was great, honestly, because it had a great, really good song, and it showed like what his life was like, and I actually loved it. But then Dr. Belshaw was eating a sandwich in one of the post-credit scenes
Mm-hmm.
this season, which HA has never seen and never will. But and then Kublek offers, or yeah, Huck gets a sandwich, and she's like, "Oh no, lettuce! You remembered? Like she even has a custom sandwich in the
Right.
apocalypse."
Do you know what's really funny? This is why you and I are definitely friends, or one of the many reasons. But I wrote in my notes, "white sandwich."
Dwight.
I was just like, "Sandwiches are evil?" Question mark.
Question mark. Well, because apparently, I
Or I
mean,
guess
yeah,
access to sandwiches implies some nefarious evil plan. I don't know. It's a really
yeah.
funny thing. Like I feel like there must be a real sandwich hater on the show, or the sandwiches have symbolized something that we're not getting here, but I kind of love whoever's doing it.
Because a sandwich represents the bringing together of so many ingredients,
Maybe.
and that in both cases that we've seen it, that includes the exploitation of the farmer. I
True.
assume is what
Maybe.
this means, or the artisan is exploited. Because there is no scenario where a sandwich is being made by happy people.
No, no. These are all very unhappy and sad, forlorn
We
sandwiches.
haven't even seen inside the CR. They might be the happiest farmers ever, but it you just because it's the bad guys eating the sandwiches in every scenario, we are led to believe this can't be the case.
Right. There's also an awful lot of nefariousness going on about this watch that she's been given. They
Yeah,
bring it up again 1,000 times, just about that this was her dad's
and
watch,
yet
and
nothing by the end of the season, nothing.
right. So in any case, and it does, I guess, drive the point home because it gives the Kublek character a chance to basically tell her daughter that, they're kind of doubting her a little bit, and there's a little something going on because she was late, and there's this whole weird double speak about the watch, and all like that the watch is supposed to make it so she's on time, And look, I
One of the
have to.
things that Huck says in this back and forth is, if people are doubting me, remember, look what I did to my face, and I spent the days on that raft and my arm, and which makes me think, wait, was this Marine Corps flashback even real?
Real? I know. That's like, I was like, now are we doubting what this flashback was? Or was that something she was telling Hope to get her trust? Now it's sort of like, okay, unreliable narrator. So what is real? So I guess that, yeah, that was definitely, I flagged that too. And I was like, so what was this? Was this just what she was telling Hope? So now we have to question that too. The other thing I would say is that, okay, so she's out on this mission. She's supposed to get the asset, which is clearly one of the girls. And she makes all these comments just about how the girl isn't ready. And like, okay, so if the timing and if the mission and all this stuff is like, they're on some kind of a schedule or whatever, but it doesn't seem like that's how it would work anyway. Like, you have these people going across the country. They didn't anticipate that they would get a car, so it probably would have been even longer. You've got Huck trying to like get away from the group for a little bit to be able to report in. I kind of feel like they would give a little bit more leeway here than apparently seems to be the case.
Yeah, right.
And there's a lot of this stuff that both the CRM is all knowing and yet not, and so there's it's inconsistency in this storyline that troubles me. And then you've also got Huck, like that. She definitely cares about the people in the group, and she overall has to make decisions. And you and I both assumed that she had killed Tony and at least injured Percy before, and that is clearly the case. But you've also got these things happening between her and I'm gonna blend these two episodes, I'm sure, in my head. But so you've got like, other than sort of her behavior that we as the audience can see, because I wouldn't say we're somewhat objective because we're not in the situation, obviously. You've got things happening like again, it's like this magical sort of thinking from characters where they jump to conclusions and you don't know how they got there. So you've got, Hope and Iris hanging out with Huck. Huck is clearly grooming Hope for something. And so I kind of assumed Hope was the asset, even though the ridiculousness that they now like sort of ascribe to her is
Can we not do the asset stuff until later, because that's just a whole ball of wax.
well, no, we can talk about that later. However, there's things where it's like Iris suddenly stops trusting Huck, and it doesn't
yeah,
seem
it comes
to,
out of nowhere.
it doesn't come from anywhere. You don't see where it's coming from. It's like a gut feeling that she has, and that's like
because she's got intuition. That's part of the genius.
Oh God.
Oh Lord.
Anyway,
Back in the truck, you've got also Huck is driving past a sign that says Ithaca and Syracuse. So they are in New York.
Mm-hmm.
They have effectively skipped, and I take this personally, Illinois.
Yep.
Indiana, Ohio, and a bit of Pennsylvania at the very least.
Yeah.
They skipped 4 states, and really the service we were given of them crossing Iowa was nothing. Like, I feel cheated.
Yeah,
I wanted to see more of the Midwest, but it's like, oh, they're flyover states anyway.
I wanted to see more of the Midwest. I also wanted to see them, like, the thing that has been somewhat disappointing in this is that you kind of want to see what's happening. Like, it would have been really cool to see at least like Chicago or something, like how the rest of the world. I mean, I get it, because this is kind of like, these huge set pieces are pretty hard to pull off, especially apparently with what they're working with here. But
yeah, and the budget was maybe not up to the task, because the walkers in these episodes, and maybe it's just because they're 10 years in walkers, and walkers have been pretty rare in this entire show. But don't you feel like they looked a little clunky?
Oh yeah, they definitely did. They're definitely not the same walkers. I mean, and I think they are trying to give some kind of deference to the time passing, where they're like a little bit more rattly or whatever you want to call it. But
they have giant heads.
Yeah. So I wanted to see a lot more of that, like sort of what was going on in the rest of the world. Like, I don't know. It's kind of cool to see little, like, I don't know, when they come across a house or they come across buildings or towns or whatever, and to see kind of what's going on there. Like I thought that stuff would have been more interesting.
Yeah.
But they don't do that, so they skip over all of that and they end up in Ithaca.
So
But
kind of fast. And Huck purposefully crashes their vehicle and so that they can be on foot so that she can work on separating out the asset. The thing that happens right after this, they're like, all right, let's walk. We'll find shelter. It's 2 miles behind us. And then they're suddenly surrounded by zombies that are all linked with barbed wire,
yeah.
which is, my mind boggles. Like,
Yep.
how does this happen?
And
It's
also, they managed to somehow close the circle super quick. Like, this doesn't even
zombies
make
all
sense.
connected by barbed wire would just end up in like a knot, like a yarn ball of barbed
Right.
wire on the floor. I have to think, not in some giant circle perfectly designed to capture this group of people on the road.
Well, and I mean, my first thought was that this was some CRM plot to try to,
Me too.
and it didn't turn out to be that. It just turned out to be
Not that smart.
no.
No, just an
Um,
accidental barbed wire zombie chain.
yeah.
And during this fight, somehow we don't see this during the fight. We see it as a flashback later. Huck is able to deftly slice through Felix's Achilles tendon without anybody noticing and without like handicapping him for life.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane. And he believes that he just got sliced on some wire. I, to me, I just don't think he would have missed out of his peripheral vision that she was swiping at him with a big spear. First of all, there would have been a lot of noise right behind him. She could have just easily cut off his foot, you know? I don't know. It seemed really insane to me that she was able to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, he would be probably even more hurt than we see him. I mean,
Yes.
we think it's barbed wire at first and it's clearly infected and there's all sorts of stuff going on. But if she did this to him, he would be, I don't think he'd even be able to walk. No way.
Yeah. Not even limp. Like
Right.
people who, when this happens on the show, we've seen this happen to other characters on the show or in other products. Yeah, you fall over and you're done. You're not walking.
Right. Plus blood loss, all sorts of other stuff. But maybe
Yeah,
his
I kind of
boots.
thought he'd been bitten for a while when
Yeah, me too.
he's peeling that bandage away and it looks super nasty.
Yeah. But no.
Yeah, but no. Anyways, just
She's so artful with how she cuts him that
they
apparently it's just a flesh wound.
the pressure that's on Huck for her to complete her mission and to do it in a way that she's choosing to do it, which is mercifully, I guess. It's astronomical.
Yeah. And they're
Uh,
putting an awful lot on, I guess like this is my bigger thing. Like if there is a quote unquote asset that they're trying to get, um they have the means, they have like all the stuff that they could do. I mean, I don't know that this method that they're going about with Huck makes any sense at all. Because they clearly can sort of deploy a bunch of people. They can pick them up like they did with Rick.
mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't know what happened to Rick, but like, we do know that they have the capability of just sort of plucking somebody.
Yeah, there's no
Um,
need for this. Honestly, as soon as they got far enough away from the colony, Huck could have said, "All right, we're here. Come and get us."
right. So, I mean, so we've got this whole like mishmash with Huck, the girls, and Felix, and she's quote unquote trying to keep everybody safe. I do think that obviously she does care about Felix and Iris. Like she doesn't want to kill them. She has no qualms about new people, which means like Tony, of course, bit it, and she didn't care about Percy. And look,
Yeah.
those are people that are wily and have managed to sort of like steal stuff from CRM in terms of fuel and all this stuff. And now that we know she's CRM, it makes a little bit more sense that some of these places have been abandoned. I don't know that she's been communicating and telling people to steer clear of the places they're heading, but maybe that was going on.
Maybe.
But so we've got that whole mess with them, and then we've got the pretty, which we the more interesting part of this story is Elton kind of like out on his own in the world. We thought originally that he would be tracking down what's his face,
Silas, yeah.
and he, we thought that's where he was, but we see him kind of on his own in the world, with his mom's book and kind of dealing with the aftermath of the news that his mom is dead.
And that she murdered somebody and he's
Yeah.
taking it, he's like kind of he's flipping out, and this is good. I think this is good. Him tearing the pages out of this
Yeah,
manuscript that's been this like holy grail for
for
him the
him.
whole
Yeah,
season is pretty powerful. And the fact that he's still hauling around all of Silas's crap is also kind of cool. And I like that this didn't move quite as fast as I was hoping it would, the
right.
getting the boys together, but it happens in this episode,
Yeah,
basically,
and
doesn't it? Or
it's
no, I guess Silas happens in the next
the
episode.
next one, but it does in this one. You know, he regrets tearing his mom's book apart, and then like
Yeah.
tracks down the page and comes across Percy. And I do like how they did this because Percy's pretty injured. Like he's clearly got blood loss. He's been shot.
Yeah.
They do a really. I did like how this whole interaction and
Oh,
storytelling
me
went.
too.
It
Me
was
too.
very cool.
Highlight of these two episodes, I'd
Yeah,
say.
absolutely. So they, you have him coming across Percy, who's in a like really in a vulnerable position because he's lost so much blood. Elton saves him from a walker, and then basically starts. Little Elton is trying to like carry Percy and drag him, and it sort of oscillates between like Percy is clearly not conscious, and Elton is kind of protecting him and dragging him with him, and is just totally determined to save him. And he discovers on his own that Percy has, I mean, he looks at the wound and it's not a bite wound, it's clearly a shot. And so there's all sorts of weird things going on in Elton's head, but he's imagining, this narrative between him and Percy is sort of like coaching him through different things. And I really loved this sort of this narrative where
Yeah.
Elton is actually truly alone because he can't talk to Percy, yet he's talking to Percy. I don't know. I thought it was like a weird little Jiminy Cricket kind of
It was well
thing.
done. It didn't drag out too long
No.
before you knew what was happening, because Percy's the one who's like, I'm dying, and you should just check the wound I know you
Right.
don't want to, but you should just look at it. And like they peeled back and let you see what's going on. And then ultimately Elton is able to take down four zombies, although really he only kills one of them. The other three just lie down.
Yeah. And
One of
don't
them
really.
literally, he hits him on the knee and then it just lies down and doesn't get up again. And I'm like, zombies are not what they used to be.
Well, I actually thought this was going to go. I thought he was going to be taking care of one, and then one would like get Elton or get Percy. So I
Mm.
really thought, but I loved that they bring back the fisherman thing that he has to like show how he's going to do it and how he overcomes the odds. I mean, I will say, if he had like gotten his crap together, he probably could have taken these out easily if he had just run down and met them before they even got close. Because there's not that many, and they are sort of slow and decrepit. But I did like this. I thought it was a good thing, and how he just can't bring himself. This is just who he is, and I did love how that showed so much about this character. And we've seen his little pristine corduroy suit throughout this thing, and it gets all bloody, and that's sort of like, I mean, he's basically been baptized into this new way of thinking, which I think is pretty cool the way they show it. And he's been like even though he's all along been like, oh, this world is gonna end. We all know he doesn't really believe that. Like he really is this person that's like, oh, this is my new family. This is my chosen family. I'm gonna
Mm.
go after Silas because it's right. Because I don't believe he did these things. I'm gonna save Percy because it's right. Even though I have very mixed feelings about him, but I'm still gonna save him because he's vulnerable right now. And I think that there's definitely a little curiosity. He wants to know who the heck shot him. And he probably knows in his own head who it is, but it takes Percy actually waking up and being like, no, to get off the walkie-talkie, Huck's evil. Like that kind of moment I thought was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, the timing was a little
Suspect, but
perfect.
yeah.
Meanwhile, not Percy, Felix and everybody else ends up at this retirement home, where immediately everybody starts giving Huck like side eye and giving her these like suspicious glances. This is where this part comes in. It doesn't
Oh,
make
this
any
drives me
sense that
nuts.
they got to this conclusion, and Iris starts confiding in
Felix.
Hope, saying, "Oh, I don't think that she's on the level. I don't trust her, et cetera, et cetera." And you're like, you
Where
have
did this
zero
come
reason to
from?
do that. Yeah. Uh, I really wish that they'd taken off Felix's shoe and sock and like actually tended to his wound instead of just letting
Leaving it
him
in the
deal with it on
boot?
his own. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of bananas. Um, and yeah, I don't know. This retirement home is super safe. Again, like everything in this show, zombies only show up when they're allowed, and when they can either make like an interesting timer set piece or when, yeah, they're so convenient in this whole series.
Right.
It's kind of dumb. But a lot of this episode is also in flashbacks introducing Will, Felix's lover.
Well, and also we're seeing a little bit of what's happening with their dad at the facility, who has apparently, I don't know, it's like clearly he has suspicions about CRM, but we see what's going on, why Felix ultimately didn't go on the journey, and then there's the whole thing with Will and how he met Will.
It's kind of messed up that Will takes Felix's place, and Leo's okay with that, and he's like, Will told me this is what you need or something. Like he gets really involved in their business.
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
And Will is like, you need to be more accepting of other people's control, and I'm leaving now for months or for an unknown amount of time. Goodbye, boyfriend.
Well, and I also think that part of this was set up because how they initially met was talking to Huck and making sure she was on the level. And I think that they were trying to set up the whole betray, like how much Felix would feel betrayed by that, and also how he hadn't figured it out that she was basically a double agent. So I think that they were trying to build that piece too, maybe.
There's like very little actual Huck in that. I mean, there's a little bit just with her saying, "Can we just skip this and be cool, be friends?" And she's just using her charisma, as it were. But yeah, like I didn't really. I mean, I felt like there's a connection between Felix and Will, but I did not understand this like eventual like I'm leaving now thing, and it didn't. I mean, I get why that would suck, but it didn't make sense to me why Will would have volunteered for it when he knew that Felix really wanted to go, but also didn't feel like he could. I don't know.
I mean, I think he knew that Felix wanted to go, and he knew that Felix wanted somebody to protect Leo. And I think that was part of it. But the whole thing, again, they're trying to just create conflict within the show, because I also think Will would probably have talked about it,
not let
Felix.
It come up over dinner.
Yeah, like I also think Leo would have talked about it with Felix, knowing what was going on with him and Will. Like, I don't think any of these people would have had all this like weird underlying passive aggressive sort of communication, because that's the kind of stuff that gets you killed in this world. So like, you have to be direct with people, and so this didn't ring true to me, and I thought it was kind of weird. So there's that too.
But now at least we know what Will looks like, and that he's probably going to come back, and he does, unsurprisingly, at the very end. We also have Hope decoding the secret message at the retirement home, where she discovers that Huck's call sign is Raft Embed Agent, which is honestly the worst call sign for a secret agent I've ever heard of.
It's also the most obvious, because anybody like could identify who she was. Like, wouldn't it make
3 words? Like a call
ridiculous.
Sign should be like 1 word. Yeah. Like eagle, or I don't know, salmon if you want it to be river based.
Yeah, something.
Jesus.
And also the fact that she's come on, and then this is the first sort of like ridiculousness, not the first, but the ridiculousness that we've seen in this whole episode. Like,
she's a code breaker now, because we've seen so much to support the fact that she can break codes. But yeah, this is the opening salvo in what in the next episode turns into just a tidal wave of idiocy on the part of the writers of this show.
Yep.
Where we're now supposed to believe that Hope is a genius, independently. And all of that is based on this flashback that Leo has apparently shared, that she took apart and rebuilt a computer when she was like 7.
Yeah. And
that is the basis of her genius.
That is, where they're trying to push this narrative that they've shown us nothing of up until this point. In
because she
fact,
has all kinds of bad decision making.
yeah. And we've seen nothing of this other than maybe the fact that she's able to make champagne, which I admit is probably a pretty good skill set to have in an apocalypse. But like we have never seen any of this genius level anything. There's been no, and you know what? No way that this would be hidden. No way that everybody wouldn't know about it. Do you know what I mean? Like this is such a rare thing that she supposedly has and is able, like talents and things like that. Like the dad wouldn't have been talking about that with the CRM folks from the get go. Give me a break. So the fact that this is revealed in this way and then suddenly they try to like back like they're like, oh, we're gonna retrofit this into the entire show, it's just BS. And I thought this
It's
was terrible,
yeah.
and I was like, are you kidding me? I laughed, like I had to actually
Oh, I was having a good chuckle.
I had to actually rewind it because I was laughing so hard. I was like, okay, let me get this straight, and I had to like kind of like rewind and
So we've
watch.
also had Leo described as like the smartest person at the campus colony,
Right,
right? So he's a genius, and he is going to be so hoodwinked by his
right,
daughter rebuilding a computer and doesn't know that the other daughter had a hand in it too. And
right,
wouldn't this be based on anything else other than this one instance, which is all it seems to be based on,
right.
unless in every other scenario, Hope and Iris have been helping each other finish their homework or
Right,
something to
right.
make.
No, it's ridiculous. And also, the other thing that I found to be just so ridiculous is that okay, so Leo's a total genius. He's gonna like if he knows that this stuff is dangerous to reveal to any of the CRM folks, he certainly wouldn't have been talking about this with this woman that he doesn't know. I mean, he's been, this other
Well,
doctor.
now they are romantically
Well,
involved.
they are, but he still has a lot of skepticism about what's going on there, enough that he hasn't shared these concerns with her.
But he doesn't know that she's a baddie because he confides in her
Well, but
after having the worst date in the history of all dates.
right, they
God,
eat
it was such a
lentils.
long, boring
Oh,
date.
it's terrible. And but what I'm saying is that if he has all this skepticism, I doubt he would be making vulnerable secrets about his kids if he's
Yeah,
worried that other people, no way, just no way would he do it.
yeah.
And and then also he knows that this woman is part of this organization. Is he going to tell her he has doubts about it? No
Maybe it's all
way.
just a miscommunication. Maybe he was just like, my daughter Hope, she's really a wacky one. She built a computer when she was like 6. I'm not saying that she's a genius, is like the unspoken part. Just that, this was a crazy thing that happened. But then Belshaw and Kublek were like, what? She's a genius? She must be an asset. Let's go kill the entire
I
colony
know.
to get her
And
and
it,
embed one of our people
and an
and do a,
entire working colony, like an entire colony that's doing well, that could probably help us out with some of the things
right?
that we need. Like this seems kind of crazy. And also, by the way, they had a lot of smart people working there.
You'd
So
think it's a college.
we're going to kill them all? Like all
Yeah,
these
so the
people that could potentially help us with our, like this seems so insane to me. And also the way that he keeps talking about, oh, Hope doesn't know what she is. Like it's always like what she is. It's this mysterious. And then Huck even says to Hope, "Kid, you don't even know what you are," or like it just, or it's like
God,
all so
I
ridiculous.
really I'd hoped that she just had antibodies to the virus or something
Yes,
in her
I thought
blood
that's what it was
because
gonna
that would
be.
have been more useful than her not realizing that she was a genius. There's a line even in this episode where she's like, "I guess I'm smarter than I thought I was."
The other part that, well, what I thought it was going to be initially when Huck said that to her, I thought it was going to be more than that. Like I thought it was going to turn out that she was actually the daughter of Kublek or the daughter of somebody important within CRM, or I thought that like she and Iris had ended up somehow in this orphanage, and there was something more to this backstory, that it wasn't just that she was a genius, that there was some crazy reason that they were going through all this trouble. But no, that's not apparently what's going on. It's the big thing is that she's a genius and they have to bring her over to the CRM's way of thinking.
To get her to go willingly to
Right.
help with the work.
Right. And then somehow we're also supposed to believe that Hope, who has the worst impulse control out of anybody that we have seen in the show, somehow is able to rein all of that stuff in and pretend to be on board with everything because she's such a like subtle personality. I mean, we're talking about the person that flipped off Kublek in the first episode.
Yeah.
Like so
Obviously the work of a genius.
yes. So I don't know. This whole
You
storyline made me like. I mean, it really was humorous.
know, it's hard to write for geniuses. They should have brought in Affleck and
Yeah, it
Matt
should have
Damon
been like a
for
Goodwill Hunting kind of thing. It would have been
like,
awesome.
hey, this is how you write a genius.
And then the ultimate like betrayal with Huck and Felix and that whole fight scene, I thought was just stupid. And then the whole
It
like
was a
sister.
very long fight scene. I
Yeah,
felt like they were fighting for a good 10 minutes. Uh, but yeah, it was bad.
and then the whole stupid reveal that it's both both Hope and Iris that is combined genius because they work together and now they throw in the big intuition piece that we've only just discovered Iris has, really, and that she actually helped Hope with the radio, and therefore they have only one piece of the genius. Like, give me a break. And then their whole little stupid grin girl thing, where it's like they'll reveal parts of the conversation later that happened that you think you saw but you didn't see, and all of this is just like terrible. And then we've also got the trio of gentlemen running around and
The boys
reunited.
team.
The boys team, which I like them being reunited with Silas. I like how Elton truly does believe in Silas, and
Silas's revelation that he's not a mass murderer or a serial killer. Yeah, I mean, I guess they have to do that work, but I also found it a little tiring
yeah, me
to
too.
watch him have to go through that process because it's like, yeah, dude, all we had to do was see the bullet hole in Percy, and also all we really needed to hear was Huck say, "I'm a CRM agent" to know that who
Yeah,
did it. And so we don't really need to be along for this ride of Silas thinking like, "Wait,
right.
I'm a murderer. No, I'm not a murderer, and I'm gonna have a 5 minute scene about this."
Yep.
Sweet.
Yep.
Uh,
And
so I was really hoping that they would have accomplished more in this episode, but really all they do is hook up
sacri-
with Silas, who
and
started a
sacrifice
fire.
Silas.
Yeah, so hook up with Silas, have the realization that he's not a bad man, and then he's like, "I will cut my hand and surrender to the CRM so that you can get away." Why is CRM looking for the guy who started a fire in this town? Nobody knows. It's it's a little foolish. Also, the whole the way that scene unfolds, where the CRM shows up, it's daylight. The three
And then
boys are
suddenly
like,
it's night.
"We have to get out of here," and then cut to another group, maybe I don't know, Huck and Hope, and then cut back to the boys, and it's pitch black nighttime, and the CRM are still just outside their building, haven't made any progress, are still just standing
Right.
there. It's like this is feeling bad. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
Like I feel like they messed up this episode in like five different
yeah, and
ways.
also, by the way, they have dogs, so it's not like they can't track whatever's
Yeah.
happening. You know what I mean? They have dogs,
Yeah.
like, so that seemed kind of insane to me. And then the other part is, well, I mean, I think that Huck probably sent them, or they heard, like, we do get a bit of this mystery cleared up at how they found the boys or whatever, but Kublek said they had been listening in on the radio, so they knew that the boys were out there somewhere and wanted to clean up loose ends, and there's still
Mhm.
some weird distrust of Huck going on. So I guess that's how they found them. But you're right, like this sort of standoff, or at least them looking for the boys, took so much longer than like three boys hiding in a warehouse where they were dumb enough to start a fire. Like,
Yeah.
because they wouldn't have gone. The whole thing is just kind of nuts.
So, given that the premise of this entire show has been undermined by the fact that it was based on the genius of two characters who are clearly not geniuses,
Right.
and the fact that CRM thinks that they're geniuses and is willing to kill 9,000 people to secure their genius or one of their geniuses,
Mm-hmm.
uh, at the end of this episode, when Kublek is like, "Oh no, Huck, you are a bad agent. The thing you just did, you didn't do it well enough, even though it's an insane mission."
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "And I have to clean up the loose ends." And I'm like, who cares
Yeah.
if there are people out there who know what's just happened? CRM doesn't have to care about PR
Nope.
or if like two teenagers know what's going on. Even Felix, I mean, maybe they'll in the next season they'll be like, and that was the seed that led to the revolution. I'm like, maybe, but CR is at least 200,000 people. I think Kublek said in one episode this season.
Right.
They don't have to worry about
About
loose
randos.
ends
Yeah, they don't have to
and
worry
like
about
the
people.
negative press, you know.
No, and they also don't have to really worry about them mounting any sort of a defense because it's only like a couple of people. Like,
The
couple.
resources they're willing to put into this are just ridiculous.
Yeah, this is just crazy. So,
Except
um,
in the case where they send one agent to recover this asset.
right.
They send in one agent to recover the asset, and yet they send an army
to
to
take
go and
down those.
destroy the campus colony.
Right. And then there's the other reveal that Huck didn't know that they had done that to the colony. Like Kublek implies that she'll tell her later. And then we also have when
Will
we
appears to know all about it though, which is kind
yes.
of weird.
So Will gets reunited and knows all about the fact that the college had been taken down, and he has the sad duty of telling Felix and them about it. And then we've also got, I guess the reason why they have to mop up the loose ends is this whole speech between Iris and Felix where they're like, we're going to get Hope back and we're going to go and take care of all this. And Felix is like asking advice of a teenage girl. And he's like, and how are we going to do this? She's like, because we can, because we have to, because Hope and I are a super genius duo team. I don't know.
We will because we can, and this is how we give our lives meaning. And I'm like, you know what, girl? First of all, you have a triceratops horn on the end of a piece of wood. Please just walk away. You're not worth it.
Yes. So this was like the big wrap up. Writers, I don't know. Like this was just out of the spin-off series. I just think that they really like blew it on this. Like there were so many cool things that I was hoping to learn in this series. Like I thought there would be a lot more tie-in and we could learn a lot more about the CR. And we hear, we have learned a little bit, but like there's still no rational reason why they would give up the resources that they're giving up or destroying throughout all of this. We get a few silly speeches from Kublek about this, where it's all about quote unquote protecting civilization. And again, this is sort of the idea that there's like a group of people and it's their way or the highway, and you can't have free thinkers out there, and you can't have like all of this dangerous knowledge. But again, I don't think that a few random people out there is going to threaten you at all. And if you thought it was, you would never even have let the college campus thrive in the first place. So I was kind of hoping there would be a little bit more of the reveal of the power structure of the CR and how they came to be. Maybe there will be more of that later, but overall, I just thought that this doesn't seem to make sense from any kind of if they're what they say they are and they're trying to protect, like, genius and crops and resources, destroying all these people that have actually survived and seem to be surviving peaceably and are willing to strike, a balance and strike agreements with you. Doesn't make sense. Like we're not talking like this isn't like the wolves. This isn't like, the skinwalker people, like the whisperers. Like these are not insane groups. This was like a very civilized group of people.
Maybe their greatest flaw was that they were, sweater vest wearing, unable to defend themselves type people who were raising teenagers in the apocalypse who
don't know how to
couldn't survive.
That's
so
possible.
As a colony of liabilities, maybe that was the problem. But it didn't seem like they were having trouble with security. They had their leather coat gang. I don't know. So this was an extremely poor way to end. The upshot, I guess, is that now Will has rejoined them with his group of hillbillies for Felix and Iris to connect with, and probably shortly Percy and Elton will connect with them. Meanwhile, Silas and Hope and Leo are all on the inside, and we'll see what kind of shenanigans they can get up to. But at the end of the day, I hope that the first thing they do is give Hope a IQ test, and it'll be like super average, and then maybe the show ends. I don't know.
I don't know. It's it's a mystery. I don't know. Like there were as I said, the thing that I found disappointing was that I feel like they had a lot of opportunities to do some really cool things with this, things that we were interested in learning about, and they just didn't, to try to drive this very weak storyline along. And clearly they're trying to build for something else, I guess. I don't know. And maybe this setup, because at the end of this, ultimately we've got Hope being taken in by the CR. She's with Kublek. We've got, a little bit of doubt, and Huck is showing doubt about what the CR is doing. But maybe that will set up for a more interesting next series where we have these people trying to rescue Hope, or we have Hope on the inside and we learn more in that way, and she'll be reunited with her dad. I don't know, but I just felt like overall this was just a very strange way to kind of go about getting us to this point.
Very strange.
Without showing us some of the more interesting things that I would like to see.
I would have liked to have seen some more world building. I would have liked to have seen them come across other colonies and what they are looking like. And they didn't even really have to deal with humans and the unpredictability, other than Percy and Tony. And yes, that was like, ooh, they're bad, but they're good. They didn't have any kind of, they didn't have any villagers sort of interactions. And I would have thought that would be more of a common thing. So yeah, the world building is something that I was excited for, especially when it's in a new part of the United States that we haven't seen before. But they opted to skip over 4 states out of 6 or 7. And that was, so to me, that was part of my disappointment in terms of what I would have liked to have seen out of this season.
Right. And there's only supposed to be 2 seasons of this at all, right?
Yeah, so, this is halfway. We're almost there.
So they don't have that much time to sort of build whatever it is they want to. And so that also surprised me a little bit too. Like maybe they felt like they didn't have a lot of time, so they wanted to crush all this stuff into this one season, but it didn't seem to make total sense to me. So we'll see. I know that, I don't know when, I'm not quite sure when season 2 is premiering, but supposedly we get more info about where Rick is going to be, or where Rick has gone to.
We'll see. There's no guarantees of that, but I'm sure if those movies aren't in production yet, they're Andrew Lincoln, I can't imagine. Maybe he's like contracted in hardcore, like ironclad, but doesn't he probably want to get on with his life?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe, but he's still agreed to be part of it, so we'll see.
Yeah. I think we've come to the end of our time.
Okay.
For World Beyond. I'm so done talking about this episode.
Me too.
But what we are going to do next? Fear?
I think we should do Fear.
Yeah. I've seen a few of the episodes, the first few episodes, and there's some interesting things to talk about in there. And so we will get to that.
Cool.
I always feel a little guilty after crapping all over, a project like this, but honestly, I know I'm not alone based on the Rotten Tomatoes reviews. So it's not, and it's just been disheartening.
I mean, as I said, there were some good things. As I said, I think Elton's my favorite part of the show, and Felix, and I just wish they had, as I said 3 times. 3 times I say it. I think that there were some really good actors and characters in this that they didn't do enough with. Yeah. I am very disappointed in what they did with Hope and Iris. I'm very disappointed in what they did with Silas, honestly, because I think that they could have made that character so much cooler. Yeah. And maybe they're redeeming it in the next season, who knows? But I don't like it because the show is supposed to be directed towards YA audience. Or maybe like just, like a younger audience, and it's supposed to be appealing to them. I don't like it when showrunners and writers and directors act like their audience is dumb. I think the most successful shows in this genre are when you assume that people understand what's going on. And I think that if you do have this audience that's built into watching this and enjoys watching this kind of thing, they're going to be bothered by the same things we were bothered by. So I just don't like that that's the tack that they took. But let's see what happens in the next season, and maybe it will be similar, like where Fear the Walking Dead definitely improved, and so maybe they can do a little bit magic on that, and it'll be more interesting now that we've got all the sort of like bulky will they won't they survive out in the wild thing out of the way. I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, we'll talk about Fear the Walking Dead next time, and we'll probably talk about the second season of this once they actually premiere it. And until next time, let us know what you think. Send us an email on reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can leave a note on our website, reanimatedpodcast.com. I'm curious to hear if I'm assuming we're not the only ones who think this based upon the Rotten Tomatoes rating, but I don't know if we're being too cynical and negative. I don't know. I'd like to hear opposing viewpoints to that. But until next time, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great holiday weekend, and ciao.
Bye.